Hello. So in our next learning objective, we really want to know why Bush's approval rating fell prior to the 1992 election. So once again, as we mentioned, Bush's approval rating was very high after the Persian Gulf War. His approval rating fell rapidly, though, as the economy began to slip into a recession. And for right or wrong, people always tend to blame the president when things are going poorly. Now, of course, if things are going good, the president tends to get the credit. So it's kind of, it is what it is. It's like if things are good, even though the president can't single-handedly control the economy, if things are good, people feel good about it. If they're bad, people feel bad. And that extends over largely to people's impressions about the president. So the end of the Cold War also had a major effect and helped contribute actually to this recession. Because what happens is with the Cold War over, there was very much a sense that we didn't need as much military spending as we had had. So we began to scale back, and the defense industry made major cuts. We closed Air Force bases. I had mentioned in the last section the Atwater High School. A lot of the students there, their parents had been in the military. That's because there was an active Air Force base, Castle Air Force Base in Atwater. It closed. It's now an air museum, but the base itself is closed. Fort Ord, a giant Army base over near Monterey, was closed. Many military bases throughout the United States ended up being closed as we began to downsize the military. And so, that results in layoffs, not only in terms of the defense industry and the military, but a lot of these areas close to military bases that had been dependent upon business from the military, without military families there, a lot of them began to scale back and lay people off as well. And so, also kind of at this time, companies start downsizing. Companies began to, question what they were spending money on. And so, for example, public relations departments. A lot of companies had public relations departments, but at this point in time, that was kind of seen as being unnecessary. So, that was one area that was downsized. So a lot of companies began to try to streamline their businesses and began to lay off workers that they felt weren't quite so necessary. And the result of all that downsizing is less jobs, less economic activity, less consumer spending, ultimately a stagnant economy. We slide into a recession. Then also Bush has that whole problem. Remember that campaign promise I told you about, where he said, read my lips, no new taxes. Well, like I said, that comes back to really bite him in the rear end because the Democrats paint him into a corner by threatening to shut down the government. He concedes to a tax increase. Then, of course, that's thrown back in his face in the 1992 presidential election, where voters are frequently reminded that Bush broke his promise and raised taxes. Ultimately, this causes his approval rating to plummet, and he wins he wins the Republican nomination, which is almost a foregone conclusion as an incumbent, but he loses the general election to Bill Clinton. And at that time, Bill Clinton wasn't as well known, but I think Bill Clinton largely gets elected on a protest vote. People are unhappy about the economy. People thus are unhappy with Bush. Bush loses the 1992 election. Now we enter into the era of Bill Clinton.